What is up, guys? It is King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh! Back again with a deck profile that I am confident calling pretty good. I know, it's not a skit. What's going on here? Is he okay? Everybody be cool, all right? Those of you that are new to my channel and subscribed for skits, sometimes I do deck profiles. Some of them are even pretty good. Today I'm going to be bringing you my take on the Gouki deck, which I know you've probably already seen a lot of out there, so hopefully I can bring you something different. I do want to give a quick shout out to Sir Emanon because he has been doing a ton of work on this deck, and I've been watching him and kind of doing research based on his videos and my own playtesting. So while it is my own take on the build, I definitely want to give credit where credit is due, and I wouldn't understand the deck as well as I do now if I hadn't seen his videos. So definitely go check him out. He's doing a lot of cool stuff. I'll have the link in my description here. And let's talk a little bit about the deck before we jump into the profile. As always, if you're not interested in this part, feel free to skip ahead. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm not gonna know. I think this deck is really underrated. I'm honestly surprised that this deck isn't ranked higher in some people's eyes, because I think, especially after the ban list hits, this deck is gonna be up there within the meta again. It's just so good and so consistent, and honestly, it packs a huge punch. I think really, and I'm going to give credit here to my friend James who actually coined this phrasing, it's meta adjacent right now. It's just right there, you know? It can do a lot, and it can do it well. Let's go ahead and hop into some of the deck's strengths. So first off, I have to say this deck has an incredible ability, thanks to the Gouki effects, to chain block a lot of the main hand traps. Yes, you're still kind of susceptible to things like Effect Veiler and really probably more prominently Infinite Impermanence, but other than those two, you can kind of play around things, and you can even get set up to stop Nibiru, which is incredible. This next strength kind of ties in with what I already just said, but that means you can play through interruptions. Again, thanks to the Gouki cards searching themselves for follow-up and the ability to continue to play. All really thanks to the spell Gouki Rematch, you can kind of get reset and go into some form of play and still get all the value out of your cards, which is really awesome. The engine pretty much searches itself. No matter what, if you get two warriors, you can pretty much just go off, and then if it's Goukis, you can just keep searching more Goukis, which is awesome because you, like I said before, you have that hand ready for follow-up or to just continue to play through interruption. The deck also is really great because it has so many inherent extenders and the ability to extend through and recover, which is really helpful because there's lots of interruption being played right now. You kind of just have to assume that you will be interrupted in some way, so you have to have ways to bait out those things, and this deck does it really well. The last and final strength of the deck is that it can make some incredible game-winning boards, which is no surprise to anybody, I'm sure. Now let's talk about some weaknesses. I know this isn't the fun part of the video, but I want to tell you the truth. To be fair, a lot of the weaknesses though that I am about to name off, I tried to combat in my playtesting and building of this deck, so I'll try to mention that too. The first one is if Isolde, is it Isolde? How are we saying that? I'm just gonna go with Isolde. If that gets stopped and you didn't already get to search for some other things and they weren't the right things that are gonna help you play through, you're extending a handshake most likely. So that's a bummer. That last weakness kind of ties into this one. Due to the nature of the fact that this is such an all-in deck where you're trying to put all of your best things out there turn one and try to play through interruption and just lock down the game, such as modern Yu-Gi-Oh! When that gets torn apart, I found that I really didn't have anywhere else to go. Now, I did try to combat that in my profile, but I will tell you that a lot of the builds out there do have that weakness. And that actually leads me to the next one, which is really just a personal preference that I consider to be a negative. You may not feel this way, but I don't really like playing solitaire for like 23 minutes before I'm finally done. It is cool to kind of do, I like combo decks, you know, I like the fact that I'm putting the puzzle together to put out my best options, but I like it better when that's more of a toolbox or finding the right utility and interaction. I do hate that the current game is like, I'm just gonna solitaire till I have a bunch of negates, but you kind of have to. So if you don't like that, I wouldn't play this deck. The last really big weakness that I found is that you hard lose to back row, like heavy back row or even Mystic Mine. So those are things that I tried to combat by putting things in the side deck. That way, if you do run into that game one, you can side for it game two and hopefully steal that match. That's actually it for the strengths and weaknesses, or did I say pros and cons? I honestly don't know. You know what I mean. It's it for that part of the video, and now we're gonna move into some quick math and probabilities. All right, so here we are at the probabilities, and for this section of my deck profile videos, I don't always calculate calculate the same types of probabilities for each deck. I try to look at, all right, what is the pathway to my win condition, and what's the probability of me seeing that path? And really for this deck, all you need to see is 2 warriors on the field. If you can get there, you'll probably see your win condition because you've still got 3 cards left in hand that hopefully allow you to play through interruptions or still combo off. Out of your 42 card deck, 22 of those things are essentially warriors, so it's really easy to see 2 of them. 10 out of those 22 special summon themselves in some way. Yes, there are certain, contingencies that need to be met with some of them, but overall, you're going to see warriors that can work together to achieve that goal of seeing a sold on the field, and then hopefully going into your play line that leads to your win condition. Your chances of opening up 2 warriors is actually 86%. Your chances of seeing at least 1 extender that you have in the deck, and some of the warriors actually double as extenders, is 90%. And we're running 4 cards that count as hand trap defenders. Even though the deck can chain block, there are some that still hurt. You have a 41% chance of seeing those hand trap defenders, which I know doesn't really sound that good, but it's a good ratio so that you're not seeing them too much, and that percentage is still higher than your opponent seeing one of the 3 copies of the hand trap that hurts the most, which is usually something like Imperm. I guess sometimes it could be another one, but yeah. Let's say they're running 3 Imperm, they have a 33% chance of seeing that card, while you have a 41% chance of seeing a way to defend against that card. Now, yes, the probabilities do kind of like mesh together and become this one very little probability of that happening at the same time, but alas, there's not much we can do about that at this point in time. That's just the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! My last probability is actually a negative probability. That means we want this to be low, and that's your ability to see cards that are just full-on bricks. Great news, you have about a 1% chance of actually seeing things that totally, completely brick you from making your wanted plays. By that I mean the worst possible combinations are when you see both equip spells that you're running, or you see both Phantom Knights monsters, which means something's not going to work out, there's just no way you can do it. Luckily, there's about a 1% chance that you'll either see both equip spells or see both Phantom Knights monsters. Now yes, you might see 1 equip spell plus a Phantom Knights monster, but I'm saying the only thing that really sucks is when you see both equips or both Phantom Knights. So that percentage is pretty low. Assuming my math is right here, and I'm not saying it is, but I think I did okay, we're looking at a pretty good deck. Now let's hop into the profile. Alright, so here we are, we're going to start off with our monsters. We'll start with our Gouki lineup, and I'm not going to explain every single Gouki card's effect unless the utility actually matters. Just know that all Gouki cards search for other Gouki cards, which is why they're so good actually. Your engine, as I mentioned previously, searches itself, which is awesome. So we start out with 3 Suprex. Now the utility of this card does matter right off the bat because it special summons another Gouki from your hand, which is a really, really good play starter. The only downside to this is it is normal summon reliant, but you do have enough extenders that maybe you can bait with this and so on. So still a really good card. Unfortunately, normal summons are slowly but surely being too slow or too vulnerable. But again, you have to play it. It's still good, but yeah, I just thought I would mention that. Then we've got 2 Twist Cobra. Its effect otherwise doesn't really matter other than searching other Gouki cards, and it's just a different level, which is really important for rematch. So we run 2 of these because it's not really important to see, and we run enough Gouki cards that we don't need to run this at 3. The only important one we run at 3. Then we've got Headbat, which I guess I lied when I said the only important one. I shouldn't have phrased it that way because this one is important, but because the Gouki cards already search each other, we have lots of pathways to get to Headbat. Now this does have a utility to special summon itself, but that is contingent on you already having a Gouki card on field, and of course it searches out more Gouki cards to allow for more follow-up play and so on. So we have this at 2 just in case we kind of see a weird, awkward, bricky hand, we want to be able to get to another one. As long as we've survived and so on. So I have most of the other Gouki cards except for Suprex at 2. Same thing here with Octo Stretch. This utility, I didn't think it mattered until it saved me actually in a recent local tournament I went to. This one actually did save me from being killed in turn 2. I went first, they broke my board, and then they were about to attack for game with actually Utopia double, and I was able to use this to save myself, come back and take that game. So this can be strangely useful if you're stuck with it in your hand, but otherwise you're just using it to summon with Isolde, and then search more Gouki cards. Same thing with Guts. We don't really use its other effects. It's just another Gouki name that is easy to bring out. Then we've got our non-Gouki warriors that double as extenders or play starters or whatever you want to say, because we do need 2 warriors on field to get our plays going. So we start out with Photon Thrasher on the extenders. A lot of people are running the Super Quantum Red layer. I'm not actively against that choice. I understand that it's got like a niche interaction with the Noble Knight spell that I'm actually not running, or Infernoble rather. I think that Infernoble spell might be able to search it or do something like that. For me, the payoff wasn't worth spending another $30 on a card that essentially does the same thing as Photon Thrasher for the deck. So if you're looking to save money and you've got Photon Thrasher laying around, you could just throw these in and it works just fine. But if you're like, no, I have to go with what I've seen already, I think it works better, feel free to throw in the Super Quantum guy. I totally get the merits behind that. I just didn't think that it was enough of a payoff to purchase that playset just for this deck. But I understand, again. Then we've got Blue Mountain Butter Spy. This one is just at 1, just because, again, this is one of those that can be really, really helpful, but it is contingent on a normal summon, which is sometimes risky. So we want to be sure that we just have an even mix of normal and special summons here, which is why we also play 2 Junk Forward. That gives us 5 cards that, as long as we have no monsters on the field, we can just special summon for free, and that's not counting some of our spells that double as that as well. Then we've got 2 Fireflint Lady, contingent on already having a warrior on field, but it's also got that weird niche effect that allows you to bring out, unless I'm reading this wrong, yeah, you can. It has that niche effect that if you really need to, if you couldn't get your Gouki out for whatever reason, let's say you normal summoned a Gouki, you couldn't bring out another one because that wasn't Suprex, and you would really like to get your second Gouki out, you can special summon your Flint Lady, send it to the graveyard, and then special summon that monster. Otherwise, Fireflint Lady is just a really good extender that you can bring out for free as long as you have a warrior on the field. And then we've got some of our bricks here. They only brick if you open double. So we've got our 2 Phantom Knights, which if you open both of these, that's a major bummer, but like I mentioned previously, that is an incredibly low percentage. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's very, very unlikely, especially running a 42 card deck. Then we've got 0 Day. This one's nice because it's not really a brick in hand. It kind of sucks because you'd rather just bring it out from the deck, but also, you know, if you see it in hand, it's at least still playable, which is fine. And then we have our 3 Ash. You could really throw in whatever your favorite hand trap is here, depending on the environment that you're playing in. I just threw in the one that covers the most ground right here because we're also running Imperm. I know Gamma has become really, really popular in today's metagame. I just personally prefer not to run it because I don't like the fact that I can just open a driver and then I've got more chances of drawing into unplayable cards, but that's just my personal preference. I definitely understand why it's a high impact, really good hand trap, and it's a really budget friendly one too. So if you don't want to pay for Ash, you could throw in Gamma and still have a really, really competitive deck. You just do also run the risk of having to throw in that driver and opening on that when you don't want to, which again, it's my personal preference to just not have that risk when we're already running quite a few Garnets in this specific deck. All right, so let's move on to the spells and traps. All right, so for our spell and trap lineup, we actually start out with 2 Gouki Rematch. The only reason we're running 2 is because it's incredibly searchable. It's an incredible extender. I really love how good this is and how it allows the deck to just go off and even play through crazy interruptions, but you don't need to run more because of how searchable it is. So again, you can run the 3rd, but it's really not necessary, so that's why it's at 2. Then we have 2 Eagle Booster and 2 Prohibition. Now I know as soon as I see this, I lose some credibility from some of you. You're like, gosh, this guy, he's playing Prohibition, I'm clicking off, I'm not listening to him anymore. I understand that this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but you have to understand that Isolde, even though you can chain block really well and really easily, there are still cards that are high impact that can cause you to extend a handshake if your Isolde doesn't get to go off. So I really wanted to put in at least 4 cards that allow me to stop those cards and protect Isolde, because that gives me about a 41% chance of seeing them to their, they're allowed to run 3 of like imperm. So for me, it makes the most sense because imperm is probably the one that it's most vulnerable to due to the fact that we can chain block almost everything else, and Nibiru we can sometimes just play through anyway. So these really help give me a chance to protect the Isolde play and keep everything going off. Whereas if you don't play something that protects it, you are running the risk of just extending a handshake if they open on the right hand trap. So I understand if you don't want to play this, I totally get it. Substitute it with more extenders, or if you're really still playing Called by the Grave at this point in time, I guess you can, but it's not really that good anymore in my opinion. But again, this is really a matter of preference. This is what I decided to do to protect from those hand traps that can cause me to just not be able to play anymore. I get it if it's not your thing though, I really do. So there you have it. Do with this what you will. These are 4 slots that you could fill with whatever you want in the deck, but for me, I felt like it was good to have a defense for the Isolde play. I know I over-explained that, but I'm charged and ready to receive the hate for playing Prohibition. Alright, so next we have our Phoenix Blade, which is pretty standard, I'm pretty sure, in a lot of the Isolde builds and Warrior builds. And then we've got I chose the Haute-Eclair Infernal Arms card because if you are kind of stuck in a position where you had to go second, this is a really good card to, if you do open on it, because sometimes you just do, right? You can equip this and it's not a total loss because when it's sent to the graveyard, it allows you to pop a card, which is fantastic. So it just allows you to get a little more payoff off of your equipped spells if you do happen to open on them. But like I mentioned before, the chances of opening both are really, really small, which is a good thing. And Phoenix Blade here is really just your standard build. I understand a lot of people are running the other Infernal Arms card because of its interactions with Fireflint Lady and the red layer Super Quantum guy, but because we're not running the red layer, I didn't really feel the need to run the other Infernal Arms. If you're running that package, I totally get it. It can help the deck in certain niche interactions, but it's not totally necessary for the deck to be able to play and go off. Next, we've got oh, whoops, I said that wrong. I almost said Infernal Arms again. Reinforcement of the Army, sorry. Gosh, I'm reading upside down, forgive me. And then we've got Instant Fusion, and then we've got our Hornet Drones. So this is just another copy of whatever warrior you want. Instant Fusion is really awesome because it brings out our Invoked Raijin, which is just another warrior for free, but also going second, and you will have to go second sometimes. You can use the Raijin, and it's not a total loss. You can just flip something face down or beta negate, and you didn't really lose anything. I guess technically it was a 1-for-1, but I think it's worth it. Then we've got the Hornet Drones here, which again is just, it's a token, but it's another free warrior on field as long as you don't control something in the main monster zone. So it's really consistent. Like I said, guys, you have lots of ways to get 2 warriors on the field. And then we've got 3 Imperm, which is just a really, really useful hand trap and regular trap. You can kind of play it however the situation sees fit, which is why I run it in pretty much everything. I mean, there's a reason that it's a staple nowadays. If you don't want to run Imperm due to price reasons, you can definitely substitute this for, really you could throw in the Gamma driver package, or you could throw in Effect Veilers, or even some more extenders, but you do need something though, most likely, that's going to interact with your opponent and make it harder for them to play. You could even substitute this with Lost Winds. Just understand that you lose the ability to leave this in going second. You'll want to think about that when you're sighting. So really up to you guys, but yeah, you really want to have something here that'll interact with your opponent. And then we've got 2 Fog Blade, just because right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! We're just trying to prevent our opponent from playing, I guess. And then we've got our Shade Brigandine, which is just another warrior if we want to link some more, but it also can double as an Exceeds material to make our Abyss Dweller in those situations when we need to. And thanks to the Phantom Knights package, we actually can make an Abyss Dweller very consistently. Rusty's made that a lot more possible because we get a guaranteed level 4. As long as we have another one, which we will with 0 day, by the way, you can do this. So it's really, really easy to do and use this to make Dweller. And that's it for the spells and traps. We'll go ahead and move on to the extra deck. Alright, so for our extra deck, I do just want to explain that I did put some different things in here than you might have seen in other builds, and that's because I wanted to take care of the inherent issues that I found, and really it was kind of one overall issue with minor issues under an umbrella. I hope that makes sense. But the main one just really being that you go all in with your extra deck a lot of the time, and then if they do break your board, you have no follow-up play to really take care of issues. And you know, if they break your board, you essentially lost in past builds that I've tried. So I tried to take care of that issue by giving you more options for follow-up plays and removal. hopefully it worked, and hopefully you see the merit behind it. But yeah, I just really wanted to take care of that. And a lot of the times too, you didn't have a whole lot in other builds for going second, so I tried to take care of that issue as well. But you can kind of merge those two issues together. Basically, when you're not going first and you're dealing with something else on board, you need to have options. So I tried to fix that issue. Anyway, let's move on and get started here. We've got 2 Isolde. You really need to have 2 because there is an off chance that you do just get stopped but survive. So you want to be able to reset your plays and do it again. So that's why we have 2 to give ourselves a second chance if we do survive, which is possible. And then we've got IP Masquerena for those times where you do have to just stop your plays because maybe you couldn't figure out a way to stop Nibiru or something else that you know your opponent is going to do to you. So you stop, and then you can use Masquerena on their turn to maybe go into something big like an Avramax, which is already a difficult to stop boss monster, and then IP's effect makes it even tougher to out. So that's when you use IP Masquerena. No secrets there, I'm sure a lot of you already knew that. Then we've got Nightmare Phoenix, which is there for that inherent back row removal. The only thing that this doesn't really out is Mystic Mine, but otherwise it's a really good utility card. Now I understand that, you know, it might just end up negated, but at least you got to bait the negate and you still have link material on board. So Phoenix is really good. Then we've got Security Dragon. I know this is an unusual choice, but I really like this for going second. It allows me to create something that is going to interact with my opponent and takes less resources than a Unicorn, so that I can still use this to link up after I've used it, whereas Unicorn might not work as a material. It might end up be, you know, the way that link monsters work. As a link 3, it might end up only counting as a link 1 when I'm trying to climb into something. So that's why I decided to go with Security Dragon. I understand the merit behind Unicorn and I'm not against using it, but for me this made more sense because I don't really need more interruption for going first. Like, I'm not ending on an IP to make Unicorn. So for me, it just, yeah, this made the most sense for when I go second. Same thing here with Ningirsu. I just wanted some non-targeting, non-destruction removal that doesn't take a ton of resources and is a good beat stick to leave on board. So it's a really good card to have to just kind of out something really quick, or just bait negates. Like, a lot of these removal cards will bait negates so that you can continue to climb into your big link monsters. But then we've got our Virus Swordsman, which brings out our Berserker, and this will eventually bring back your Swordsman in 0 day. That allows you to make your Rusty Bardiche. That's really all these do together, is get you to a place where you're linking up to bigger link monsters. This does have a niche effect where it can pop spells and traps, so if you need that effect, you can use it. But remember, we are usually going first, or at least trying to, so you won't use that as often. But when you are in those situations where you're forced to go second, or you're maybe in mid-game and you didn't get to make this yet, this can be really useful that way. And of course, Rusty Bardiche, I hope I don't need to explain. It's there to access those fog blades and combo off some more by getting access to your silent boots and so on. Then we've got Appaloosa, which is there to stop Nibiru. We can make it on our 5th summon most of the time. And even if we don't need to stop a Nibiru, we're protected from a lot of the other hand traps that are monsters when we make this. And even if we don't need to use it to stop those things, it's just a nice thing to stop on to have interruption for our opponent going first and then passing to them, of course, which is no secret to anybody. Then we've got our access code talker. This is there for those moments when we just need to get rid of things and we don't want our opponent to respond. There is a window, unfortunately. When you first summon this, they won't respond to it gaining attack. Then they can do something if they would like, but hopefully they don't, and you get to pop some stuff, you know? But if you don't want to invest the money in access code, I completely understand that. You could throw something in like Unchained Abomination, you could throw in something like Borreload or Boral Sword. They're just not going to be as useful because they just do different things. Nothing quite does what access code does, which is why people play access code. So that's just something to remember, but I totally get it if that's not in your budget. Then we've got Avramax, which is there for the IP interaction. I really like using IP to go into this because then it's just a really tough to out boss monster that can attack over big things that maybe we couldn't with some of the others. And then we've got our Power Load Ogre, just because this can really catch your opponent off guard and you can make it consistently. It's one of those cards where it's like, oh wait, what? It's unaffected by everything, and then your opponent's completely unable to deal with that, and it can steal games for you. Now, if they do have kaijus or, you know, sphere modes, or even in the future in February, that weird Link 5, I think, that's able to use your opponent's monsters to link summon, you know, this will be a little less powerful and impactful, but even then, that takes a lot of resources. So I think that this is a good choice to catch your opponent off guard and give them something that they just have to deal with. Yes, you can just attack over it, but this does get really big right away. So that's something to consider. And even if they do go into something to try and attack over it, they're going to have to get through your interruption first, because you can make this in addition to your Appaloosa and other interruptions. So they're going to have to figure out ways around that to be able to attack over this. And by the time they've gotten rid of your other interruption, they probably won't be able to. So this can really steal games for you. Next, we've got Abyss Dweller for the graveyard decks. We can consistently make this thanks to the PK engine, being able to get to Rusty, and then slowly but surely to our Shade Brigandine. And then with 0 Day being in the picture, we can consistently have 2 level 4s on the board, as well as with Gouki Rematch. So we can make Abyss Dweller really, really easily and consistently to shut down graveyard decks. And then we've got Raijin, which is just a free warrior with instant fusion, but it also has that Book of Moon effect, which can be useful in niche situations like going second or mid-game if you hadn't used it yet. So there's the extra deck. Let's move into the side deck. So for my side deck, I always want to make sure that I preface these with, these are my choices for the situations that I find myself in and playing. Definitely make your own choices for the side deck based on where you're playing, who you're playing, and what decks you think you will see. But these are some thoughts I have on how to side with Goukis. You definitely don't need to take these at face value and be like, this is how you have to side. These are just my personal preferences and things to think about for your side deck. You go from there. So I have Lancia in here because I really hate the Dino matchup, and this pretty much stops dinos from doing things. It also has some kind of soft interactions with the other meta decks, so it can kind of stop them and make it harder for them to play, but this is mostly there for dino matchups, which are really, really tough for us, so that's why it's there. Then we've actually got, ironically, a dinosaur. We have Pankratops and 2 evenly matched. These can be for monsters or back row, which is what I really love about them. They're versatile removal, so that's why those are there. And then for specifically monster removal, I went with Nibiru for those combo decks because there are a lot of them and they are the top decks, so that's why we have this in here. Then this card's a little more quirky, and I understand that. So you might not play this card, and I understand, but I will explain it and hopefully it will make sense to you. For more monster removal, I have Herald of the Abyss. Because a lot of the negation right now is specifically geared toward monsters, so this is almost a guaranteed 1-for-1. Let's say you're facing down an Appaloosa, you can call this out and the Appaloosa can't negate this. Now I understand that a lot of people are ending on things other than that, but what this will do at minimum is be a 1-for-1 where they have to just lose their negate. So just picture you're taking away a negate, a monster negate, or you're taking away one of your opponent's resources for free. You just call out the type and attribute and they have to send that to the graveyard, which also gets around destruction, like trigger effects. So I really like Herald of the Abyss. I think it's an underrated card. The reason that I picked this over Dark Ruler No More or something of that nature is because I really like to be able to still push and hopefully take the game if I'm going second and trying to remove things. I don't want to use Dark Ruler No More and then maybe take control of the game, because a lot of these decks that I would use Dark Ruler No More against are so recursive and resilient that if I don't win, it doesn't really matter that I did it. So I wanted to pick something that was a little more impactful, but would still allow me to take the game. So that's why I went with this. I understand if this isn't your style though, definitely ignore me, do what you want to do. Then for the back row, which does suck, we've got Cosmic Cyclone. And remember too, we've got 2 Evenlies and a Pankratops, so technically we've got 6 things that we'll be siding in to take care of the back row decks that can just stop us in our tracks. So yeah guys, that is my side deck. Definitely think about these choices, but do what suits you best for your play style and your play environment. But yeah, that's the whole deck profile. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, give it a like, maybe share it around, and consider subscribing. All right, see ya.